Adjustment. And this is the April 25th, 2023 Zoning Board meeting. This evening's meeting will be conducted in a hybrid format. The meeting is accessible in person in the third floor auditorium of Nashua City Hall, 229 Main Street, and via Zoom at the link posted in all public meeting agendas. Attendance via telephone is available using the Zoom connection details. Minutes of tonight's meeting, as well as audio and video recordings, will be available later at the nashuanh.gov/agenda center, and please select Zoning Board of Adjustment. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-589-3056, and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. The chair is in control of the proceedings and calls upon all who wish to speak in order as their raised hands are observed. The board follows the meeting protocols and procedures identified in its bylaws. The applicant will present their case for 15 minutes, followed by questions by the board. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor or with questions or opposition will be asked to speak for up to 5 minutes. If there are questions or concerns or opposition, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present a response. Finally, one and only one person with questions or in opposition will be permitted to speak again before the board deliberates and determines an outcome. A timer is used to manage speaking time. Kate Poirier, our zoning board coordinator, will notify us when 1 minute is remaining and again when the speaker's time has expired. If you are participating by Zoom and wish to speak when public input is requested, please use the raise hand option, which can be found under Reactions on a computer or the More menu on a phone. The chair will call you in turn. Please use the lower hand option when you have completed your questions and comments. Please mute your microphone until called upon to speak. Note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. Tonight we will be hearing requests for deviation from the Nashua Zoning Code in the form of applications for special exceptions and/or variances. A special exception is a request that seeks permission to do something that the zoning ordinance permits only under special circumstances. To grant a special exception, 5 points of law are required to be met. These are outlined in the application and will be summarized in board motions. A variance is a request that seeks permission to do something the ordinance does not permit. Variances also have 5 points of law to be met, different from those for special exceptions. For the City of Nashua bylaws and State of New Hampshire revised statutes, a minimum of 3 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any application. In addition, this board will hear all scheduled cases if a quorum of 3 voting board members is present at this meeting. Any citizen has the right to contest the decision that this board makes. Should we render a decision that you believe is in error, you have the right to request a rehearing. A written rehearing request must be received by the City of Nashua Planning Department within 30 calendar days from the date of decision. Should this board not grant a rehearing request, you can file an appeal directly to the New Hampshire Superior Court. Please contact Mr. Falk of the Planning Department for more information. For this meeting, we have the following full board members in attendance. Myself, Mary Ellen McKay, Chair, Mr. Rob Shaw, Vice Chair, Mr. J.P. Boucher, Clerk, Mr. Jack Courier, and we also have the following alternate members in attendance, Mr. Jay Mancara and Mr. Josh Neely. In addition to the board members, we also have with us Mr. Carter Falk, our Deputy Planning Manager, and Ms. Kate Poirier, our Zoning Coordinator. We will start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. I also wanted to state that alternates may fully participate in discussions, but will vote only if a full board member recuses themselves or there are fewer than 5 full board members in attendance. Tonight, we have fewer than 5 full board members in attendance, so we will alternate between Mr. Mancara and Mr. Neely voting on cases. Now for the roll. Mr. Shaw.
Present.
Mr. Boucher.
Present.
Mr. Courier.
Present.
Mr. Mancara.
Present.
And Mr. Neely.
Present.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay. I'm also present. So we will move to the first case. Owner John Strickland, 8 Bailey Street. Oh, excuse me, I wanted to, before I go forward with this, note that there has been a change to our agenda. We now have an amended agenda, correct, Mr. Falk?
Yes, Madam Chair. The case at 7 East Dunstable Road will not be heard tonight. It will be re-advertised and will go to the May 9th meeting.
Thank you. Now we can proceed. John G. Strickland, owner, 8 Bailey Street, sheet 138, lot 47, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-44A to exceed maximum fence height, 6 feet permitted, 8 feet requested for 100 linear feet along rear property line. This is in the R9 zone in Ward 1. Is there someone here to present this case?
Yes, this is me. How's everyone tonight?
I think we're fine, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
John Strickland, 8 Bailey Street, Nashua.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I had a series of pine trees that went along the backyard, 10 of them. I had them taken down. There was a wooden fence there, and I want to put up a privacy fence. You have a letter from my neighbor who I abut the property with, and he actually encouraged it. So I just want to put the fence up. It's not a spite fence, it's a privacy fence. It's a beautiful, white, brand-new fence. And both me and my wife would like to put that up. As you see, I have a letter from Jeffrey Locke, who abuts the property for the 100 feet, and saying that, you know, he has no objections to me putting up the fence. So, that's it.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Courier.
Just wanted to clarify, in your application, I think it said that you and your rear abutting neighbor have elevated porches that you...
Yeah, they're about a foot off the ground. So the only, you know, I mean, that enhances the ability to see each other. He has his family. He has 5 kids. I have my family. We're sitting on the porch. We can both see each other. With the privacy fence, we're going to have privacy. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in favor of this application? You may sit if you like, or you can still stand, Mr. Strickland. It's your choice. Do we have anyone on Zoom at all? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Neely.
I'm generally in favor of this application. The applicant did a good job putting this together. You can see from the pictures that fence looks like it was falling down. Having been there recently, you can see it's gone. So there is definitely a gap between the two properties. An 8-foot privacy fence is, as the applicant stated, is really going to add to the flavor of the neighborhood. It's certainly not going to decrease property value at all. Really, the fact that we received a letter from the abutting neighbor on the back in favor of this really, in my mind, just really puts this to bed. So I am generally in favor of this.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
I'm also in favor of the application. I note that, again, the fence, having looked at the property, the fence won't cause any visual impairments, so it won't remove any of the enjoyment for either property. So it's not like it's so high that it blocks out sky or sun or anything like that. Like sometimes what we hear or we understand from other cases that we've heard. in regards to anything, whether it's a building, being too close to property line or whatever. So in general, I'm in favor of it, and again, I think what really makes me want to support the application is that, again, that the rear abutting neighbor has absolutely no problems with this and actually wants it also for themselves. So, and then I don't believe, again, because the property, the fence will be set back on the back property line only, I don't think, again, that the fence height is going to be so noticeable from the street.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara?
I can't find support for the application. I just don't see anything that distinguishes this property from any other. All porches and decks are raised off the ground, so that doesn't distinguish the property. And there is nothing about the topography, as sometimes we have seen. It simply appears to me to be like every other lot in the neighborhood, so I can't support it.
Thank you. Mr. Courier?
I find support for the application. Couple thoughts. First, I generally agree with Mr. Boucher and Mr. Neely. When I looked at the property, the fence sits pretty far back from the street. I mean, probably it's running along the rear property lines of all the properties, but it doesn't look like it's going to be imposing at all to the street view. It's really only going to say impact, I don't know if that's the right word, the rear abutter. I was keeping an open ear for any opposition that we might hear, because I would be, concerned if there was opposition, but we're not hearing opposition, so I'm in support of it.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw?
I'm also in support of it, pretty much for all the reasons stated, and just maybe to further to Mr. Courier's point, that it looks like the lot is essentially a square lot, so it looks like it's about 100 feet back, so it is pretty far from the street. So, yeah.
Thank you. And myself, I'm also in support for all of the aforementioned reasons, but again, like has been mentioned, the abutter who would have the most impact is in support, and that does say a lot. And Mr. Neely, you will be voting on this case. Would somebody care to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Courier.
I make a motion on behalf of John Strickland at 8 Bailey Street. The request is a variance from Land Use Code 190-44A to exceed the maximum fence height. 6 feet is permitted, 8 feet is requested for 100 linear feet along the rear property line. I believe the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property given the special conditions of the property. I think the majority of the board finds that with the way the two elevated rear decks, I say, are situated, that this would provide reasonable privacy. The board also notes that the rear abutter is in support of this for the same reason. Because of this support of both rear abutters here and the fact that the board thinks it won't be visible or impose from the street, I think the board finds it's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. I think the board finds it will not adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. It's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice is served. So again, I make a motion to approve as applied.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shaw, for your second. Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor of the variance.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Shaw, how do you vote?
Mr. Shaw votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Mr. Strickland, congratulations, your variance has been granted. Any decision that is made by this board can be appealed by any member of the public. They have 30 days in which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please re-refer back to Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the Planning Department. And thank you very much for your application.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara, you will be voting in this case. Perimeter Place Investments LLP owner, Breakthrough Behavioral and Educational Consultants LLC applicant, 114 Perimeter Road, Units G and H, Sheet E, Lot 1509, requesting use variance from Land Use Code Section 199-15, Table 15-1, Number 250, to allow a preschool in a portion of an existing building. This is in the AI zone in Ward 1. Is there somebody here to present this application? If you will step forward, please, and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am Tiffany Remy. I co-own the Breakthrough Behavioral and Educational.
Excuse me, I didn't catch your name. You might want to pull that mic closer, yeah,
Is this
or you
good?
can
Can you
take
guys?
it right
Oh,
out.
good. Look at that. All right. I am Tiffany Remy. I co-own Breakthrough Behavioral and Educational Consultants. We are a company based in Nashua. We currently provide ABA services to children with autism. We have a clinic located at 78 Northeastern Boulevard, and we also have a partnership with a preschool that already exists in Amherst, New Hampshire as well. I will let Michelle introduce herself, as she is the Director of Creative Milestones.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Lozier. I'm the Director of Creative Milestones.
And can you give your address too,
Yep,
please?
the one that we're looking to seek for is 114 Perimeter Road.
No, your address.
Yep, 78 Northeastern Boulevard, Suite 3 and 4, Nashua, New Hampshire.
And can you also state your name and address for the record?
My name? Michelle Lozier, 78 Northeastern Boulevard, Suite 3 and 4.
Thank you.
Yep. We are seeking a zoning variance to establish occupancy for Creative Milestones Learning Center, which is an inclusive preschool program at 114 Perimeter Road.
We've currently done market research that shows that there's a declining enrollment in preschools, and especially as our program's inclusive. This means our students who are diagnosed with autism would have an opportunity to attend a preschool placement that can support their enrollment because we have specially trained staff. Currently, there are not many options within Nashua for those students to attend. We do service right now about 80 clients. Most of those clients do stay with us for their one-to-one services during the time that they would be typically enrolled in preschool. So we are looking to establish a preschool option for them so that they do have somewhere to practice those skills in conjunction with offering a preschool for local residents as well, so that they can have a more successful transition into their primary school setting. We do have a letter, I don't know if it made it to you, from the Airport Authority Board, as well in support of establishment of the preschool.
I didn't see that.
Now,
You
can I?
mind
Yep, I can.
Sharon, just maybe handing it to this person to take a look at it? Thank you.
Thank you.
You can continue to testify why everyone is looking at this unless you have completed what you want to say.
Okay, the only other things I can tell you is that we have addressed any concerns about safety and noise with the Airport Authority Board. They did not have any concerns with us being in that space, and they, asked us if we had any concerns about students hearing the noise from the airplane. We do have, we only anticipate having 3 to 4 students with disabilities enrolled in the program at any given time, just based on our staffing ratios, and currently we don't have any concerns about that in our current locations or other locations that we serve. And that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Wow, that was quick. Mr. Minkara.
Could you maybe just talk about what attracted you to this site?
Yeah, so this site is really already set up for a preschool. We had been looking at many locations. It's already set up in a way that would serve the licensure board, and it is in a kind of the end of a street, limit the traffic. There wouldn't be a lot of in and out movement, especially given the limited number of staffing. It seemed like a very good opportunity to utilize a space that was already set up for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Neely, did you have your hand up?
I did not.
Okay, then it was Mr. Courier that I saw.
I guess a question for Mr. Falk. Had we approved something at this facility before or nearby, if you recall?
It was at the next building over, there was an approval. There was also a dance studio that was approved in this general location. But there was another preschool. It may have been on the other side of this building, the end of the building.
Yeah, there are also two other places down the road. At 102, there is Crossroads, and they provide a similar service, and then there's Granite State Early Learning Center that's a little bit further down the road as well, that is a preschool.
And what are your typical or proposed hours of operation, and is it also year-round or during the school
Yeah,
year?
so we decided to have it year-round because there are many programs in the state of New Hampshire that don't offer year-round services. Most of them close in June, similar to a typical school schedule. Our program is only half-day, so we would start at 8:30 and the program ends at 12:30. We would be offering families an aftercare option to extend to 1:30 just to make it more reasonable for families for pickup.
And the program that you're proposing here, is this new to your business, or are you doing it now in the Amherst or Northeastern Boulevard location?
Yeah, so we have a similar program that we're running in our Nashua, our Northeastern location. We partner with an existing program that's similar to ours in Amherst, but we don't currently have our own preschool. This would be our first location.
Okay, thanks.
Does anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone here wish to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Now, I see somebody moving, but she didn't put her hand up. That being said, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Boucher.
I'm in favor of this application. Again, we've seen other requests for similar variances in the area, but we treat everything differently. But again, I think this fits in. I think that the impact of this request is not high. The hours are, this is not a 24-hour operation. It seems to be a limited operation, and again, space-wise, it's limited to that. So I don't think that there is anything detrimental to this application that would cause any problems in the area. And also, again, we've got a letter from the airport authority, giving their approval to this request. So with that, I'm going to support the application.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the application. When we see variance proposals in industrial areas, I always take a look at it pretty closely, wanting to make sure that is this still a viable industrial area? And this is. But when I went by, noticing that we have other approved child care facilities in the area, the dance school next door, that coupled with the fact that the airport supports it, and this is clearly a needed use, so I support the application.
Thank you. Mr. Courier.
Yeah, years ago when I think this board first saw a use variance in this perimeter road in the airport industrial zone, I think there was a lot of pause and caution to it, and that was the same response that I remember getting from the National Airport Authority, but time has gone by. There's been several approvals. This is the first time I think there's, a letter just expressing support, and I take that as there hasn't been a problem with these sort of facilities in the airport industrial zone. I mean, also, I think the AI zone has been underutilized in general on that portion of the road for quite some years. So it seems reasonable to let this needed service go in, so I find support for it.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw.
I'm in support of it also pretty much for the reasons stated. I don't think I have anything to add.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this application. It is interesting as you drive down that road, just as you pass the former Daniel Webster College, there's not one aviation business on the left side of that road, and it's 3 or 4 either educational or dance studios. So it's an interesting grouping of similar type businesses in that area. So I don't anticipate any aviation businesses that are flocking to get to that area that aren't there now. So really, I'm fully in favor of this application.
Thank you, and I too am in favor. Can't see any reason, thought about the noise, but that was answered, and don't think parking's going to be an issue, so I'm in favor of the application. Would somebody care to make a motion? Mr. Curry.
I make a motion on behalf of Perimeter Place Investments. The owner, the applicant is Breakthrough Behavioral and Educational Consultants. The address is 114 Perimeter Road, Units G and H. The description is Breakthrough Behavioral and Educational Consultants is requesting a use variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, number 250, to allow a preschool on a portion of an existing building. Again, this is in Ward 1 in the Airport Industrial Zone. The board believes variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property. And the board finds that there are quite a few, or the majority of businesses on this side of the road are not airport or aviation related, but are education related, and that this use is similar to that. Also, the benefit being sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance. Again, the applicant has stated that the building is already set up for a small educational unit like they are proposing to do. So I think the board finds this is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. It will not adversely affect property values of surrounding parcels. The board finds it's not contrary to interest and substantial justice is served. So again, I make a motion to approve as applied.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shaw, for your second. Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Minkara, how do you vote?
Mr. Minkara votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Shaw, how do you vote?
Mr. Shaw votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. That is a unanimous vote. As I've stated previously, any member of the public has the right to appeal any decision made by this board. They have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Boyer in the Planning Department. Thank you for your application tonight, and congratulations. You're welcome. And Mr. Neely, who will vote in this case. Harbor Homes Incorporated owner, Spectrum Signs and Graphics, Jillian Arsenal, applicant, 46 Spring Street, sheet 32, lot 33, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-101, Table 101-7, to encroach 7 feet into the 10-foot required front yard setback to replace a non-conforming ground sign. This is in the D1 MU zone in Ward 3. Is there somebody here to present this application?
Yes, I am Ted Jarvis from Spectrum Signs and Graphics in Manchester, New Hampshire. I'm on Zoom.
Thank you very much, sir. If you would just state your address.
Sure, it's Spectrum Signs and Graphics, 97 Eddy Road, Manchester, New Hampshire.
I'm sorry. The floor is yours, sir. You may present your case.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate the board being here tonight, and appreciate the opportunity. So we have a existing sign that is at 46 Spring Street that was erected years ago by somebody, whomever, but is dilapidating, it's falling down, there are letters falling off the sign. Our client would like to put a new, fresh sign in its exact location. We're proposing on doing 4x4 pressure-treated posts with PVC sleeves and finials on the top. And in the center of that 4x4 post, we're going to do a 3/4-inch PVC direct printed UV cured sign to give a fresh look and a fresh feel for the veterans and harbor care facility there. We're not changing anything. We're actually reducing the current sign is about 25 square feet. We're going to do 20 square feet, but it'll be erected in the exact same location.
Thank you. Does anyone, Mr. Shaw?
Just one quick question. What about the height of the sign? How similar is it to the existing one?
Exact same height. We're at, my posts are at 84 inches, which is pretty much exactly what's there. It's smaller as far as the width is concerned, and that's why we reduced the sign from 25 to 20 square feet.
Thank you.
Mr. Courier?
The proposed sign has like a Veterans First portion. I was just curious, what, is that advertising something, or is that the owner? What is the Veterans First?
That's their new brand. They own several properties throughout New Hampshire that support homeless and, veterans. And it's a rebrand of their logo. I'm working with the owners on several of their properties to update their signage. But as you can see, the existing signage that is there, it's basically falling down.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition or with questions, comments, or concerns about this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Minkara.
I support the application. It's in the same location, and it's actually less non-conforming and clearly needed. The current sign is most certainly in a dilapidated state.
Thank you. Mr. Courier.
I agree with what Mr. Minkara says. The only additional observation is that current sign has been dilapidated for many years, not just recently. I think 10-plus years has been slowly making its way down and looking tired, so I think it's a net improvement. And I appreciate also that the proposed sign is slightly less non-conforming and it's not illuminated. I think it's appropriate for the facility.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw.
Yeah, I'm also in support pretty much for those reasons. I mean, it's also, in general, a relatively small sign for the structure itself, and I don't think there's any negative effects about having that signage where it's placed.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
I'm in favor of this application for the reasons stated by my colleagues.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
I'm also in favor of the application for those reasons stated.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I'm also in favor for all the reasons stated, and glad to see it replaced, because every time I go by there, I think that sign is really pretty sad looking. So, thank you for doing this. Would somebody care to make a motion? Mr. Shaw. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to make a motion on behalf of Harbor Homes, Inc., the owner, Spectrum Signs and Graphics, Jillian Arsenault, applicant, 46 Spring Street is the address, sheet 32, lot 33. The request is for a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-101, Table 101-7, to encroach 7 feet into the 10-foot required front yard setback to replace a non-conforming ground sign. This is in the D1 MU zone in Ward 3. The variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property given the special conditions of the property, and the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance. Of special note is there has been a sign here for a very long period of time. This is the exact same location, and the sign will actually be brought up to decent shape, but even more importantly, it will be somewhat less, less non-conforming that by reducing the overall area from approximately 25 square feet to 20 square feet. It's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. There's no indication of any negative effects on surrounding parcel property values. It's not contrary to public interest. Substantial justice will be served, and therefore I move to approve this area variance.
Thank you, Mr. Courier, for your second. Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Shaw, how do you vote?
Mr. Shaw votes in favor.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Mr. Jarvis, your application for a variance has been granted. As I've stated previously this evening, any member of the public has the option to appeal any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please refer back to Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the Planning Department for their assistance. Thank you for your application this evening, and congratulations on getting your variance, and thank you for updating that sign.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Next. Marlena Gilbert, owner, 9 Mount Pleasant Street, sheet 67, lot 66, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-31 to encroach 3 feet into the 6-foot required right side yard setback to replace and expand a previous non-conforming detached garage from 20 by 20 to 20 by 30 after it collapsed. This is in the RB Zone, Ward 3. Mr. Minkara.
I'm not a direct abutter, but I'm a close neighbor, so I'm going to need to recuse myself from this case.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Neely, you are up for this case, sir.
Do you want to take up the question?
Yes. Should I introduce it? Would you like to introduce it, Mr. Shaw?
I'll introduce it. So actually, just we'll ask you to wait a moment because we want to kind of take care of a kind of a piece of business here. I think the concern that we have potentially is that the Historic District Commission apparently was not able to meet due to a lack of a quorum. That was supposed to be last night, and so we don't have information regarding the Historic District Commission's view of this proposal. And so I think we should discuss tabling this until that happens. I know, so I'd like to make a motion that we table this for 2 weeks until the May 9th meeting.
It would have to be past that because...
It looks like Mr. Faulkner maybe wants to say something.
Yeah, the HDC meets on the 15th.
Oh, okay.
That's,
Okay, that's what you're going to...
well, the next HGC meeting is a little earlier. It's May 15th.
So we'd have to wait till May 23rd?
So that's correct.
Okay.
Now, there isn't really a law that states that they have to go in order. It can go tonight if the board wants, but you know, if the board decides that it's cleaner for them to go to HDC first and then to this board, I think the applicant would go along with that as well. So
I guess we could consider maybe ultimately if there's a motion to approve that it could be pending approval by the Historic District Commission. So I guess I just thought we should talk about that and figure out what our best plan of action is.
Mr. Courier.
Typically, like, say if the Historic District Commission did meet if they had approved or denied this, would we, I assume we get a correspondence on that? I'm not familiar with that process.
Yes.
You would.
Yeah. We haven't had many of them, but we've had a couple, yeah.
Yeah, there's been a few, and there has been correspondence forwarded from the HDC. Mr. Falk and Ms. Poirier are at those meetings as well.
Okay.
For the
Thank you.
aesthetics.
Yes, Mr. Neely?
Do we have the ability to take into account or ask the applicant if they'll be negatively financially affected by us pushing back?
We can't look at finances. That can't affect any decision the board makes. We could ask the applicant if, you know, our discussion and wanting to have the information from the historic district would be negatively impactful or would be, you know, nominally, and it wouldn't affect her. We can ask that question for sure.
Okay. And the reason I ask is we certainly had the conversation, I believe, last time about 7 East Dunstable, about whether they'd have to, you know, spend the extra $335 for the repost, so
And
we
that-
did consider that a bit.
That's a question that I think Mr. Fall can answer right now.
Madam Chair, there would not be any additional financial obligations by the applicant. It would be the same exact ad. This ad is only for an encroachment into a setback. It'll be the same request when she comes back, so that the ad won't be the ad won't change at all. So,
Mr. Courier?
I guess my thought would be, I'd be inclined to hear the case tonight, and if it were to receive approval, you know, I would only do that with subsequent approval, contingent on subsequent approval of the HPC, such that if the HPC had amendments or like a rejection or concerns, I'm not sure, maybe I'm not using the right adjective there, then that, you know, would nullify our approval if we approved it tonight. So I lean towards that. That's where I'm at.
I think maybe we should all discuss where our heads are at on this. So, Mr. Boucher, you look like you're ready to speak.
So the HEC is an advisory board, correct? Or?
The Historic District Commission.
Yeah. Is it an advisory board?
Mr. Boucher, they have authority similar to the Planning Board and Zoning Board. The Conservation Commission is the only land use board that we have as an advisory board, but they have a lot more authority than the Concom.
All right, so just thinking out loud, if they were to come back and not reject this, right, are we bound? If we were to hear this case after, are we bound by their decision? So if they rejected this straight out, I'm not saying that they would, where would we be at?
Well, the Historic District is only going to be looking at the aesthetics of the garage. That's it. The Zoning Board is only looking at the encroachment into a setback. The garage was a certain size, it was damaged in a storm, and now the applicant would like to build it a little bit larger. So, being into setbacks, she's grandfathered for those setbacks already, because it was damaged by a storm. We have pictures and evidence of it. Our building inspector went out there and inspected it, so we know that for a fact. So she's grandfathered in for those setbacks. But she's not grandfathered in for the portion of the garage that would be constructed in addition to what she had there before. So that's why this board is looking at that variance.
So in light of that, I would recommend that we move forward with the case. And again, we're talking about size here, so if there's architectural needs that need to be met, then that can be met no matter what size the garage is. So I personally think we should move forward with the case.
Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with it now, just after kind of understanding the process, whatever limitations there are or not. So, yeah, I think it makes sense to proceed.
Mr. Neely?
I would prefer to move forward with this case.
Okay, and I mean, in the interest of openness and transparency, I chair the zoning board, but I also chair the Historic District Commission. And so I need to, just that's why I let all of you speak and let your opinion come through. As far as the architecture, there's an architect on the Historic District Commission, and it would, have to meet that district statutes, as it were, codes. And so that would happen. I just wanted to make sure the board had that conversation, because Mr. Shaw and I did, have a brief conversation, and I just wanted to make sure we had a meeting of the minds. We're all okay. And then I, would ask, I think I can make a fair and impartial decision, but if the board wishes me to recuse myself because of my position on the historic district, I would do that as well. Mr. Shaw.
I mean, I would say certainly, first of all, it's always individual's choice only, but I see no reason why you should feel the need to recuse on this case.
Again, I'm really open. I like
Yeah.
everyone to know. I don't want to hide anything. Yes, Mr. Neely?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Shaw. I see no reason for you to recuse yourself.
Okay, thank you. I just, Ms. Gilbert, I want to keep it real. I want to keep it honest, and so that's why we do what we do. This is a very fair and impartial board. I think you've just seen that. So now we can proceed. Would you like me to read the case back into the record? Or are we good? Are you okay with just presenting?
Sure.
Then the floor is yours.
Marlena Gilbert, 9 Mount Pleasant Street, Nashua. I just bought the house on February 1st, 2022, so I'm new to Nashua. I'm happy to be here. Moved from Groton, Mass. And just very briefly, I was on the school committee there for 6 years, so I'm very familiar with all of this process, and I respect your time and is immense, and I respect the process. So thank you for your time tonight. So as Mr. Falker said, the garage unfortunately didn't make it through that big storm that we had. A lot of snow hit all at once. It was pretty dilapidated. So when it went to look at rebuilding it, I'm getting to know the neighborhood and looking at the different garages. I took drive around to try and figure out, what fits and what doesn't, and learning about the community. And the proposed garage, which is going to be coming to the HDC, repackaged, is actually going to be a duplicate garage. The only difference will be it'll be 10 feet longer towards the front of the property, so the encroachment that we're talking about is on the right side of the garage. I have already been to the DPW today and was granted a permit for a privacy fence on that side of the garage and enclosing a small portion of the yard as well for some privacy there. The garage itself will be exactly where it would be right now, only 10 feet longer, where more modern cars can fit in, as well as landscaping equipment, because I tend to do all that work myself. I'm very much in tune with property maintenance and quality and upgrades. I'm a property investor, so I do own a lot of older property in Lowell, and I take pride in restoring. So I'm very particular in regards to that. So the fence will actually be alongside the garage, as it is now. There is a fence, it's dilapidated right now. It's a wooden fence that's kind of falling down, but it is going to be replaced. It will come alongside the garage, and the fence that was already discussed and approved will be a 6-foot privacy fence along the side, and then it slopes down to a 4-foot fence as it approaches the sidewalk. That way, it adds some privacy where the overgrown bushes are there. However, it also gives a little bit more of a community-friendly neighbor feel versus that 6-foot right across the whole yours and mine thing. I didn't like that look. So I'm trying to basically put some money into the property. The variance basically would help me avoid the huge expense of basically picking up the foundation and moving it over 3 feet into my yard. to the left and forward. I can't make it bigger for lawn equipment and anything else that would make it easier for my use, reasonable use, unless I redo the whole foundation and pull it more into my yard, which would be extremely expensive. Rebuilding it to the architecture that it was before is much more expensive than just building, an arch because of the unique hip roof, which is beautiful. That's what I want to do, if permitted by the HDC. And so what I'm looking for is grandfathering in the 10 feet on the side of the garage. And in learning and I'm trying to look at my clock here, sorry, in learning the conformity for the expansion, and I try to learn, I'm a constant student, if you will. So when I was looking at the different, reasonings of, and forgive me, of the nonconformity, nature and purpose, and what it really needs to meet the criteria, I do not believe that I'm decreasing the value of that neighborhood. I think I would be increasing the value of that neighborhood. I don't think I'm imposing on my neighbor. Although I tried to meet her, I can't seem to, or her, him, I don't know, I can't seem to connect with one of my neighbors. I've met the other. I only have 2 abutters there. But I don't believe I'm decreasing in any value, I'm increasing, and it would be very costly for me to restructure, and it would completely change the look of that house and that yard if I relocated the garage to be within that, I believe it's 6 feet setback? 6 feet. Yeah, so if I was to move it 6 feet setback on all areas, which I don't even have now, it would change the look of that yard. It's not a big yard. So my goal is to try and get a usable garage and increase the value of my home, and that's it. But I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Courier.
Just to clarify, what was there was 20 by 20 feet?
Yeah, 20 by 20.
And what you're proposing is 20 wide and 30 deep, as I would call it?
Exactly, yes.
That was the only question I had. Thanks.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone on Zoom? I see a hand raised.
Yes, my name is Sarah Davis-Pagan, and I'm a citizen of Nashua, New Hampshire, and I fully believe that what she's doing is the correct move.
Can you give us your name and address again, please? I'm sorry, it was a little bit garbled.
Yeah, it's hard when you move your mouth away from your mic too, because I can't hear. My name is Sarah Davis-Pagan. I live at 22 Cheshire Street in Nashua.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments, Sarah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Is there anyone else on Zoom who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none, is there anybody here who wishes to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? If you would please approach the podium, and you can have a seat, Ms. Gilbert, yeah. And please state your name and address for the record.
I'm June Lemon. I live at 18 Manchester Street. I'm the person with the overgrown bushes that she mentioned. I don't really have an objection to this as much as I have a concern that the first I knew about this was that the garage was torn down at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So it would have been nice to have a little bit of a heads up. And I don't really have an objection as long as the garage is in keeping with the nature of the district. It's one of the reasons why I bought my house there, is I like older homes. And But I would like to know why it came down on a Sunday without any prior notice to any of the abutters.
Well, Ms. Lemon, Mr. Falk has his hand up, and also the applicant will be able to respond to that.
I believe the building department basically said that it has to come down because it's a safety issue. You don't want anybody getting hurt.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
School next door, a lot of little children walking by.
Yeah.
So that's why they wanted it down.
You know, I'm not saying that it wasn't unsafe, but as an abutter, I'm just saying it would be nice to have somebody knock on my door and say, oh, by the way, our bridge is, you know, our garage is about to collapse. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ms. Gilbert, did you want to respond, or would you just leave Mr. Carter's words? And is there anyone else here who wishes to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition? Okay. And Ms. Gilbert, you're good with Mr. Falk's comments? You didn't wish to speak again? That's perfectly fine. Here, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Currier.
I find support for the application. I mean, I'm taking it as face value that a storm either brought it down or did damage, and then, you know, the city inspector said it's, you know, needs to come down. I'm taking first, you know, that's the path that this happened. In terms of the request for the overage, you know, the existing encroachments, you know, have been there since, I'm sure, the property was built or the garage was built. So to increase the depth, as I would call it, by 10 feet, I mean, for the neighborhood, I think it's a reasonably long driveway. I think it's better suited to expand a structure that way than, say, by width. And I think it would be unreasonable to have the homeowner, you know, move the foundation to meet the setbacks. So given that it's in those two setbacks, I think it's a reasonable request. I appreciate Ms. Lemon speaking. You know, I feel bad for her agitation over the way this, you know, at least has panned out from her point of view. But I appreciate her saying that the proposed expansion isn't like unreasonable. I'd also want to point out, in my estimation, there seems to be enough driveway length that it's not going to cause a problem, you know, by making a building real big and then you have a short driveway. I don't think that's problematic here. I think there's enough driveway length. So I think given the pre-existing conditions of that garage always being in the setback, I think it's reasonable to expand that in the front by 10 feet. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw.
I'm in support also. I think, I think the reasonable argument was made why how bringing the garage more into the center part of the backyard would be not productive in most regards. And I also like to note as well, especially, and there's just all this pre-existing that's the encroachment, but also that this is such a very common occurrence in this part of the city where so many of these older garages are built basically essentially on the property line or within a couple feet or whatever. So this is it almost is more within the kind of look and feel and character of the neighborhood and all those kind of things than creating the setbacks, especially when this has already existed that way. So I'm very much in support of it.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
I'm generally in support of this application. You know, when you look at the satellite view of this garage with the car parked in front, it would have been a very tight fit inside there for two cars. You know, we have the pre-existing concrete. You can see where it is. You know, as Mr. Shaw said, this is very common in this part of town. I really can see no reason that we should not move forward in favor of this application.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
I'm also in favor for the reasons spoken to, and again, just to reiterate, what Mr. Shaw was speaking about, and the other members, is that if you look through the neighborhood on Abbott Street and on Pleasant Street and that whole area, you'll see the homes and garages are pretty much up against the property line. So this is, I think, within, complete character of the neighborhood, if you want to say. I think it fits in, and again, this is more of a larger open lot compared to some of the other lots. So again, I don't think this is a negative impact. I think, again, it's a benefit to the homeowner and to the neighborhood.
Thank you, and I too am in support of this. It makes logical common sense. The thing I liked too was, and for a different reason, aesthetically, she wanted the fence to come down from 6 to 4 feet. But what's going to happen too is that if she's backing out of that driveway or coming out of that driveway, she's going to be able to see over 4 feet. At 6 feet or 5 feet, it's going to cause an issue. And that's a wise way to go. And yeah, all the houses there, they have these giant houses on little lots and everything is just squeezed in, but it's pretty. No, it's so pretty. So would somebody care to make, Mr. Courier, thank you very much, sir.
I make a motion on behalf of Marlena Gilbert at 9 Mount Pleasant Street. Again, the request is a variance from Land Use Code Section 190-31 to encroach 3 feet into the 6-foot required right side yard setback to replace and expand a previous non-conforming detached garage from 20 by 20 to 20 by 30 feet after it collapsed. The board believes this variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property given the special conditions of the property, and the board notes that the previous 20 by 20 garage encroaches both into the right and rear yard setback. The board notes that such encroachments are typical in this in older part of the neighborhood, and that the proposed expansion, which would only be in the right side yard setback, is not overburdensome or out of character with the neighborhood. The board finds it's within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. The board thinks it will not adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. It's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice would be served. As noted on our record, the board discussed the fact that the Historic District Commission hasn't adjudicated on this case yet, and the board notes that it values that opinion, and that this approval doesn't overweigh what opinion it is, and that this proposal must also meet the requirements of the Historic District Commission. And so I put that as a special condition. So again, I make a motion to approve. Is that okay, Mr. Boucher?
You may want to get a second, then I can get a clarification.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw, for your second.
So what's the?
So I think what we're saying is, while we're making a motion, I'm making a motion to approve this, stipulation on the motion is that this application must also meet the Historic District Commission, which has not met on this case yet. So it's out of order, but it still needs to meet the Historic District Commission criteria.
Thank you. And thank you for your second, Mr. Shaw. And you have a comment.
Yeah, just, I feel like sometimes this is more of a kind of useful comment or restriction, but I think in this case, probably because of HDC especially, and also the plans themselves very specifically, but sometimes we've had concerns about just stipulating that this will be a single-story structure. By all appearances, it will be. I'm assuming even in the future, if it was to become a 2-story, that would have to go back to HDC. So I don't know that we need to do that, but I know oftentimes we felt that it was just kind of one more insurance that somebody didn't do something that, we approve these kind of, encroachments, but we're silent on the height. And so I don't know if you feel like it's worth adding that or not, but I just was thinking about that a little too late in the process here.
No, I mean, I don't mind adding to the motion that per the plans, it's a one-story structure, and the board notes that this approval is for a one-story structure.
Mr. Shaw?
Okay, thank you. And you second that?
Mr. Shaw?
Amended.
If-
Oh, yes, Ms. Poirier.
If it increases in height, it would have to come back to you anyways for setbacks, because once you get taller, the setbacks increase.
Yeah, they would have to come back to the HDC and here, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's even better. I felt like there were lots of kind of, guardrails in this case that it just, I've gotten used to us kind of covering that with many other, like garage-type structures that are up against property lines. But thank you.
No, thanks, Kate. Okay, Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Shaw, how do you vote?
Mr. Shaw votes in favor?
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Congratulations, Ms. Gilbert. You have been granted your variance, and as we've stated all night, any member of the public may appeal any decision made by this board. They have 30 days with which to do so. And should you have any questions, comments, concerns, please refer back to Mr. Carter Falk. And maybe in keeping with Ms. Lemon's remark, the courtesy of the loud, removal. Well, that's fine, and you're now, able to speak with your neighbor, the neighbor you couldn't meet. So thank you again for bringing this, both of you, thank you. Have to wait for Mr. McKay to take his seat. And Mr. Minkara, you will be voting in this case. City of Nashua owner, David Boucher, Superintendent, Department of Public Works, Wastewater Division applicant, L, Campton Street, Sheet F, Lot 4A, requesting special exception to work on the 75-foot prime wetland buffer of the Nashua River to upgrade a city-owned wastewater pump station and replace an associated subsurface force main under the Nashua River. This is in the R9 zone in Ward 1. I take it you're here to present the case. Sir, if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, David Boucher, wastewater superintendent, located at 2 Sawmill Road.
The floor, sir, is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this evening. So this project, this proposal is part of a Phase 2 upgrade that the wastewater facility is doing, pump station upgrade. Specifically, this one's taking place at Northgate, which is located off of Campton Street. There's several upgrades going on with this pump station. We have internal upgrades, replacement of pumps, controls, piping, some grinders. On the exterior of the building, we have some new siding going up, some security lights going in, new staircase to access the building. Another one is that there's an emergency generator that was currently inside the building, which is going to be on a concrete pad on the outside of the building. Major part of this project is a directional drill that's going to take place from the pump station side of the river, the Campton Street side, and it's going to go under the river to the Shore Drive side of the river, over 700 feet of directional drilling. And that's to replace a 10-inch ductile iron pipe. It was installed in '84. So all the flow, I'll just tell you that all the flow from the Nashua High School North and the surrounding neighborhood flows into this pump station and gets transferred to the other side of the river. So I've got a map. I can kind of show you the location here. So the blue boxes, well, not this one, but the next one, I think. There we go. So the blue boxes here is the actual pump station, the one to the south is the pump station itself, and then to the left, the north is the, I don't know know if you can still see that, there we go.
Sorry.
The one to the north is the wet well, that's where all the flow goes into. So the majority of the work is going to take place in where the green rectangle is. That's going to be the staging area for the directional drill company to set up. I don't know what color to call that, it's kind of pinkish. There's going to be a trench dug from the pump station to a point, a starter pit, so the directional drill can start below ground. It'll be a fairly shallow pit. And on the shore drive side, there'll be another pit dug so we can make the connection to the existing sewer pipe there. Once the project's done, this will all be buried. Currently, it's a grass location. We maintain it because it's, in case we ever have to do work on there, it's an easement, so we have to have that clean. We'll restore the grass and put it all back to normal, so no trees will be taken down. So, and this will be, it's currently a ductile iron pipe going under the river. We're going to put an HDPE plastic pipe under the river to replace it. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I don't know what's
Mr. Curry?
What is the estimated life of a ductile iron pipe and an HDPE pipe?
Difficulties with ductile iron is that it's segmented, and when the ground shifts, it moves, and it creates leaks, especially under the river. So we have inflow from the river bed going into the pipe. So although it might last long, just the movement of the earth makes it problematic, because once you lose your pumping efficiency whenever you have a lot of bends in the pipe. So a lot of these sticks are like 3-foot pipes, all stuck together. So that's one of the problems we're having, is that it's difficult to clean, and it's all segmented, so we get a lot of inflow in this area.
And just how far under the riverbed is that new pipe going to be?
I'm not sure. It will be under. Their goal is to not hit any boulders or anything, but I'm not sure how deep under the riverbed it's going to go.
Okay. That was all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw?
Will there be any activity actually happening then on the Shore Drive side of the river?
Yes, there will be. On the Shore Drive side, just off the road, there's an existing 15-inch PVC pipe that we'll be connecting to. So there'll be a pit dug on that side. So when the pipe comes up through the ground, they'll have to dig a pit and connect it to the existing pipe.
Will that be outside of the buffer, though? Is that why we're not hearing about that in this?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It'll be right next to the road.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Currier?
And did you say this is handling like all the flow from the west side of Nashua?
Yeah, from the Nashua North High School and all the surrounding areas in that region, yeah.
So it goes to Shore Drive and then heads east to Sawmill?
Correct, yeah.
All right, thanks.
It goes from a 10-inch to a 15-inch on that side.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, I saw that you had acknowledged all of the wetland special conditions, and that we have a letter from the Concom.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, they had, we had agreed to put some wildflowers and reseeding the area, put down some wildflowers, native ones, and there was concerns about the lighting. We have 2 security lights. They want to make sure those are shielded and kind of down-facing lights, so it wouldn't change any migratory bird patterns.
Those were the only
Yeah.
2 conditions that they have in the letter, and in our packet is the special exception criteria that has been acknowledged, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There is nobody here. I see Zoom, but first I have to acknowledge here. So, who would wish to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Again, there's no one here to speak in opposition with questions, comments, or concerns physically. On Zoom, is there anyone who wishes to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application?
She's been trying to unmute. Hold on. How about now?
Are they unmuted?
Yeah.
I can hear you now.
Oh, good.
Do you wish to speak with any questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application?
I didn't hear the past 15 minutes of it because I couldn't hear anything. I was muted out.
Oh.
But anyway, my concern is I live on 22 Cheshire Street, and I'd like to know when the construction is going to take place, how long it's going to take place, and the pumping station as it is right now is not...
Excuse me, can you state your name and you've stated your address, but could you give me your name, please, for the record? I'm sorry.
Sarah Davis Pagan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. As I said, I'd like to know the length of the construction or the upgrades. And the pumping station right now is not real loud. It usually happens on a Thursday. I'd just like to know if the sound volume or the pumping volume is going to be louder or whatever, because I've lived here over 20 years and it can be distracting at times.
Yes, I can answer that question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, I've heard a similar complaint from a neighbor, and yes, the generator that was in the building was a rather loud generator, even though it was inside a building. The new that generator has been removed. Currently, there's a temporary generator there. We do have another generator coming within another month. That is a smaller insulated generator running off natural gas. They are designed a lot better and quieter, so you shouldn't have that noise.
And again, I can actually see out my front window where the pumping station is. Before it had like trees around it. Is it going to be, a construction that's going to be visible? Or are you going to mask it somehow?
We're trying not to remove any of the existing trees that are on both sides of the, we had to remove one because it was damaged in the front, but we're trying to keep the shielding trees on either side. In the back, there will be a fence built around that has kind of privacy slats in it.
That's good, because what's happening is there's a lot of erosion, and we built our house in a flood zone area, and we have a barrier, and the water is going to end up coming up and removing all the trees in front of the Nashua River. So we're going to have a front view of the Nashua River. So I'm a little concerned about that and having the view of the pumping station.
Yes, our plan isn't to remove any more trees, so whatever trees are there are going to stay there.
Okay. Well, I understand that, but again, apparently...
Mrs. Pagan.
My question. Yes?
Your question, I think, has been answered. We ask questions, get answers. This is getting to be more conversational, and I want to stick with our procedures, too, and our protocol. I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure that we follow the rules. Do you have any further questions specific to this project?
Then why are you asking us to be present to ask questions?
because you did ask a question. Generally, when we do this, we'll have people ask questions, all their questions, and then the applicant or respondent will answer all of those questions in turn. It doesn't go back and forth. It's a one and done. And people with opposition then have an opportunity to say, was your question answered? Yes, your question was answered. No, it was not. But since there's no one else here and you are the only person I think who is left on Zoom, we are giving a much wider latitude. Yeah. And that's why we're doing this. I just want to make sure all the questions are asked and answered, and that the applicant has the opportunity to answer them, and that yourself as an abutter or as a questioner has the right and opportunity to ask the questions. Have you gotten all your questions asked and answered?
No.
What other question do you have?
The ones that weren't answered.
Was the question about the start, date and time, and length of time?
With all due respect, ma'am, I'm done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Courier.
Just a question for the applicant. Could you just reiterate the start and proposed start and end times of your project?
Yes, the project has already started. We've been doing some work. I know some siding work has started. There's been work inside the pump station started. We put the pedestals in for the security lights. So some small work's been started at the location. We're just pending these meetings. We're waiting for the directional drill portion of the project.
All right, thank you.
And there's still pump work to be done in the building as well.
And should Mrs. Pagan have any further questions, would it be in her best interest to maybe call and speak to you, or re-refer back to Mr. Falk in the planning department, so if she feels something wasn't answered, she can get that answer?
She could. She can contact me at the wastewater facility.
Thank you. I just want to make sure all opportunities are available to everyone. Okay, having all our questions and asked and answered, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Shaw.
I feel like everything has been met as far as the criteria by testimony, and I am in support.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Neely.
I'm in favor of this application. This is absolutely critical to the infrastructure of the city. I believe we heard a case not too long ago with a semi-similar work going on in Mine Falls. I've been an observer from far, watching that as I drive by each day going north, and they have been very respectful to the environment as they're working in that area. We do appreciate that. Everything that you have promised to the Conservation Commission is can be quite easily done, and you've attested you're going to do it, and you're really not adding a whole lot to the footprint, not taking any trees down around it, except for the one you said was damaged. In fact, you're upgrading the area to be a quieter generator, which I think is a better neighbor for the folks in that area. So for those reasons, I'm in favor of this application.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
I also believe that all the conditions have been met for the special exception to work in the wetland buffer.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the application for the reasons stated.
Thank you. And Mr. Courier.
I believe it meets all the the wetland special criteria, and the infrastructure upgrade is needed. Kind of bracing for impact if it's going to impact my wastewater bill, like my real estate taxes, but let's hope Mr. Boucher can keep those costs under control here.
Thank you. And I, too, am in support of the application for all the aforementioned reasons. Would somebody care to make a motion? All right, you both went at the same time.
I don't care. You've had a couple of years without too many motions. You want
All
to?
right. Start to play catch-up. I'll make a motion on behalf of the city of Nashua. The applicant is Dave Boucher, Superintendent of the Department of Public Works. The description is request a special exception to work within the 75-foot prime wetland buffer of the Nashua River to upgrade a city-owned wastewater pump station and replace an associated subsurface force main under the Nashua River. This proposal is in the R9 zone, Ward 1. This is listed in the table of uses. Do we have that? Probably on this form, right?
190-12.
190-1, thank you.
Gosh, 112, sorry.
190-112. Board believes this will not create undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. The board finds there will be no impact on that other than perhaps during the construction. The board finds that this will not overload public water, drainage, or sewer or municipal systems. In fact, this is to improve the sewer system, which is degraded at this point under the Nashua River. By testimony in the application, Mr. Boucher has fulfilled all the special regulations, and the board finds that it will not impair integrity or be out of character with the neighborhood or be detrimental to health, morals, or welfare of the residents. The board also believes that the proposed upgrades, particularly the quieter generator, will be better for the welfare of the residents. So I make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Concom.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to amend the motion to include the minutes of the Conservation Commission meeting, and I would like to reiterate that the applicant has stated that they'll adhere to the two stipulations which are on that written approval.
Thank you. And Mr. Shaw, thank you for your second. Mr. Shaw, how do you vote?
Mr. Shaw votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Minkara, how do you vote?
Mr. Minkara votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Congratulations, sir, your special exception has been granted. As we've stated earlier, any member of the public has the right to appeal any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, please refer back to Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Boyer in the Planning Department. Thank you again for your application, and congratulations.
All right, thank you very much.
And now moving forward with the business of the board. We have no motions for a rehearing. Does anyone see any regional impact on the new agenda?
No.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
Okay, so that is unanimous. Approval of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes. We have the minutes from March 28th. Did everyone have a chance to look them over? Are there any edits? Mr. Minkara?
Just one, page 10, middle of the page, the paragraph that starts with Mr. Minkara said that in general he's in support and overall in terms of density, blah, blah, blah. In the first sentence you can see I don't have a problem with the density, and then the last one it says I do. I really didn't, so I'm going to propose a rewording of that, if that's okay. I'm going to suggest that we strike the words, he said that he has an issue with the density and insert before the word could. For that reason, he could see supporting 6, maybe 7 units, but certainly not 8. I think my intent here was to reference my concern that they were intruding in the buffer. It wasn't a concern about the density. I don't know if other people agree, but again, as you notice at the end of the first sentence, I said the general density doesn't bother him. So pretty clearly, the density wasn't my issue. It was intruding in the buffer that was my issue.
I concur with that
reasonable,
amendment. As I recall, that's exactly what the concern Mr. Minkara had was.
That was the concern.
Push the spill over into the buffer, you might say.
Are there any other edits, adjustments? Motion, Mr. Courier?
Make a motion to approve the March 28th, 2023 minutes with the amendment on page 10 as proposed by Mr. Mancara.
Thank you. Oh, who's voting? Because it's Mr. Mancara who has the concern. We'll let Mr. Neely do the voting. We'll try and keep it fair. And then on the second set of minutes, Mr. Mancara, you will vote on those.
Yes, you're actually going to abstain because it wasn't there. That's okay.
Well, that's okay. Do I have a, I'll second this motion for the minutes. Okay, so, Mr. Neely,
Mr. Neely votes in favor of the motion to approve.
Mr. Courier,
Mr. Courier votes in favor of the motion to approve.
Mr. Boucher,
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Shaw,
Mr. Shaw votes in favor.
and myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor, so that's 5-0. Now we have the minutes on April 11th. Are there any, Mr. Shaw?
Just the first top of the page for the members, it needs to reflect Mr. Boucher as the clerk, not Mr. Courier. I think it's correct at the back of the minutes, but not the front.
Ah.
Good catch, I looked right through that.
Yeah.
You're probably so used to seeing it that way.
It's just, yeah, it does say in the second, okay.
Yeah.
Probably just muscle
So,
memory.
any other adjustments? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the amended minutes of April 11th. Mr. Shaw, seconds. And so, Mr. Mancara, are you okay to vote, or are you going to abstain?
I was going to abstain just because I wasn't there, unless you'd prefer I
You
vote.
don't really have to do that.
I know.
as far as-
I could vote on it, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mancara. Mr. Courier,
I vote in favor of the motion to approve.
Mr. Boucher,
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Shaw,
Mr. Shaw votes in favor.
and myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor.
I asked Mr. Mancara to vote.
Yes, I did ask Mr. Mancara to vote. I asked him to vote first.
But
And he did.
Oh, okay, I thought
I
you were
didn't think he
asking
actually
whether or
voted.
not I was going to
I didn't think he
vote.
voted. I
That's
thought he
okay.
just-
I see, I
After
told
he
you
asked for
that.
voting.
Oh, Mr. McCarr votes in favor.
Yeah.
So now we have total clarification. It's a good thing we have Mr. Shaw here to explain Mr. Mancara and Ms. McKay to each other. I don't think we have any other business to come before the board.
Move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn at 8:02 PM.